Alrighty everyone, welcome back. Happy Memorial Day weekend to everybody out there. Now, we know that there's a lot of things going on currently with the Star Wars franchise, with the Indiana Jones franchise, and a lot of things going on specifically with Kathleen Kennedy. Now, we know that she's been talking a lot lately about both Indy 5, Skeleton Crew, and the Acolyte. Those, by the way, are the three major projects that she has full creative power and control over, that she's working hand in hand with James Mangold, Leslie Headland, and yes, even Jon Watts. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future Star Wars updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support, and without wasting too much of your time, let's get right into the subject. Now, what's really interesting about Kathleen Kennedy right now is that she has really been trying to kind of just stall the overall audience from talking more about Indy 5 and the Dial of Destiny, and really trying to basically, you know, wash out the fire that is the backlash that's brewing right now, and that has been going on for a while based on the poor critics and the poor critic reviews, I should say, from coming out of Cannes Film Festival. But looking specifically at Star Wars, alright, Kathleen Kennedy had some concerning things to say and talk about that do indeed involve no other than George Lucas himself and what her plans are for the Star Wars franchise. Now, we know that Kennedy always has had an agenda with the Star Wars universe. This is not a big surprise to anybody. This was always in the cards since 2012 when, you know, Disney took over Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy became the president of the company. However, with Kathleen Kennedy promoting Indy 5, Skeleton Crew, and the Acolyte lately, she had a couple of things to say about the Star Wars franchise. She delivered the following to the entire fan base. When we looked at both the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew, we knew that these projects had to do away with the philosophy that George had built with the originals and the prequels. Since these projects fall into creative and different eras, the only thing that worked for us was by ending Lucas's vision of Star Wars in order for us to attract newcomers that can adapt to Leslie's storytelling techniques, as well as Jon Watts, who, by the way, both have done an outstanding job with these shows. They came up to me and agreed heavily with my strategy for how these series should go. We had to disconnect from that burden of catering to the fans who expect George's material and style of Star Wars into these ones. Right now, John and Dave are doing their own thing, but myself, Leslie, and Mr. Watts are forming what is going to be a great new take on this franchise that will not only change the style and format, but also how we represent Star Wars and what it really means as a franchise. Now, let me just say one thing here about what Kathleen Kennedy is saying. Now, I do find it interesting that she did bring up that John and Dave are doing their own thing. This further and seemingly confirms that she really has little to no creative power now, only for Skeleton Crew and the Acolyte Star Wars-wise. Anything else, she has no control over, and we know for a fact that Kathleen Kennedy had zero creative involvement in the Ahsoka Tano series. And I think it's the one reason why a lot of fans are going to want to check this out, because it's going to be the first Star Wars project since 2015 that Kennedy had no creative involvement in. And I think that's why it's going to feel very different. I really, really do. So, moving to the next thing here, what's worrisome about this is that Kennedy is also confirming that the entire system of George Lucas's philosophy of Star Wars is coming to an end. It's coming to a close, specifically with her take on the franchise, with the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew, and how she is completely diminishing that style of Star Wars and doing away with all of it. Now, she said something like this before in the past, but she's really making it more apparent this time around, and making it very clear to the entire fan base that she wants nothing to do with George Lucas's outlook of Star Wars, that she wants to strip away the inspiration of mythology and history, and kind of just giving her own new spin on Star Wars by giving it a different feel or a different tone, whatever you want to call it, right? So that's basically her drive. That is her motive right now, to change the feeling of Star Wars with the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew. We already know that Leslie Headland confirmed to us directly that Acolyte is basically Frozen meets Kill Bill. And I know a lot of people were very confused over that statement, like, what in the world does that even mean? You know, what does that really mean? Is there going to be singing in the Acolyte? Well, no, there's not going to be singing in the Acolyte, but I think what they are pertaining to is that since Frozen has aspects of a sister story, they're going to probably have some kind of sister story in the Acolyte. That's what I gather. Now, what's interesting about this, though, is that she goes on to elaborate further. You don't need George for Star Wars, and you don't need the fans of George to make good Star Wars shows. It's all about originality and groundbreaking material, and that's our aim and drive for Acolyte and Skeleton Crew. We want to do what George did back in '77, by doing something completely new. What's great about Watts is he is throwing in elements of Marvel into Skeleton Crew, and we think it works perfectly for our audience that we are aiming for. Look, this is one thing I disagree with heavily with what Kathleen Kennedy is saying here about Skeleton Crew. You don't mix Star Wars and Marvel. Sorry, it just does not work. I don't know about you guys, but to me, it just does not work at all, alright? They tried to do this with The Force Awakens a little bit, with the comedic style. You guys may have very much realized that there were comedic elements in The Force Awakens that really tried to mimic the Marvel humor, and it just really does not work at all. And they've done this, by the way, in other Star Wars movies as well, under Disney's wing. And it just doesn't really work. So moving on, she goes on to conclude, I can confirm that we are done with using George's material for good in these projects, and it was time to move on and end that era of style and techniques of storytelling. It's our job to shift away from Lucas's style that has been overused, we think, and only created fan fatigue with the franchise. Alright, look, George's style of Star Wars did not create fan fatigue. What created fan fatigue was Kathleen Kennedy putting out subpar Star Wars content or material, whatever have you, be it movies or TV shows. And that's why fans really fell into fatigue. Fans were not happy consistently with the Kenobi series, with the Boba Fett show, and of course with the sequel trilogy. Those are the big ones. Now look, I've said this many times and I want to make it openly clear again. There are scenes in the sequels, the Kenobi series, and Boba Fett that I really enjoy. Alright? That's kind of like how I view the Disney Star Wars era, is that there are moments that I really love and cherish, but themselves as movies on a consistent basis or shows on a consistent level, it just doesn't work for me personally. I can't watch it consistently. So, yeah, I mean, that's how I see things. You know, it has little bursts of what Star Wars is supposed to be, and then it reverts back to Disney's outlook of Star Wars, where it just seems like it's out of place. So overall, Kathleen Kennedy confirming here that the whole style of George is coming to an end for not just Skeleton Crew, but also for the Acolyte. We know that Acolyte is going to basically be Star Wars in a Matrix style, meets Frozen, meets Kill Bill. It's going to be very strange. So anyways, guys, drop a comment below, fill me below what you guys have to say about all of this, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys next time.
Gun in hand, we are alone again, no hiding. From night to moon, we hear them moans again, no